Good evening. This is the Walpole Zoning Board of Appeals. Tonight is Wednesday, October 13th. It's just after 7 p.m. And the first case we have this evening is for a 40B application. Notice is hereby given that the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Town of Walpole will hold a public hearing in the main meeting room of Walpole Town Hall on Wednesday, October 3rd at 7 p.m. on the application from Wall Street Development Corporation, case number 21-16, with respect to property located at Darwin Lane, map 42, parcels 240 and 227-13, zoning district Residence B. The application is for a comprehensive permit pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, Section 20 through 23, as amended, to allow the construction of 28 townhouse-style condominiums within 6 buildings to be located on Darwin Lane. Okay, so that's what we've just done. We've opened the public hearing, and at this point, we fortunately have town council with us this evening. Council's going to talk to the zoning board and the public to explain some of the options that we have moving forward. Good evening, town council.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. George Pucci from KP Law, which is Walpole Town Council's office. I'm not an additional board member, so I'm only basically here to answer any questions or comments that you may have. Just a couple of points from council. The town has received a certification from Department of Housing and Community Development approving its housing production plan, and it had a 2-year period specified in that letter. So you have the ability to invoke safe harbor tonight, which is basically, safe harbor is kind of a colloquial term, but it refers to the ability of a board to deny a comprehensive permit application as consistent with local needs. And one of those regulatory local needs, consistency with that would be if you fall within certain exemptions that come under the regulations under the 40B statute. Some that you are familiar with are, 10% of the housing in the town, a 1.5% land area requirement, and the other one is, compliance with your housing production plan and that certification from DHCD. So you have the ability to invoke that tonight. The regulations, I won't get into specific citations or the time period, but if you do invoke that written notice has to go out to the applicant and to DHCD within a strict time period, 15 days of opening the public hearing. So if you go ahead and vote to invoke safe harbor, you'll want to make sure that written notice goes out that's required under the regulations within 15 days of the opening of the public hearing. And if you invoke it, you don't have to deny the application tonight. The applicant has the ability to appeal a notice, from the town that they're invoking safe harbor. He has the ability to appeal that to DHCD. They'll issue a ruling on that within 30 days. So typically, by and large, if a board wishes to invoke it, I would always recommend they continue the public hearing date out to see what the applicant does in response to that notice for the invocation of the safe harbor. And then, you'll have a date certain out by which you've continued the public hearing to. You will see whether or not the applicant has appealed or any other issues that may come up. And then you can go ahead and decide what to do with that continued hearing date. Just because you're in safe harbor doesn't mean that you're precluded from hearing a 40B. You can reserve rights under the safe harbor and go ahead and hear it, but you do not have to do that. You have the ability to deny based on the safe harbor.
Okay.
So hopefully that provides a little guidance. I did provide some suggested motions depending on what the board wanted to do. But, I do recommend you discuss it a little bit amongst yourself publicly before you, take any vote on it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, town council. So we've heard from town council that's given us, advised us that the zoning board can invoke the safe harbor. We would vote on that. And does any board member feel there's a reason to, you know, move forward with anything besides invoking safe harbor at this time? You comfortable?
Yep, I mean, can I ask just one question?
Sure.
So we don't need to take any other evidence, since the public hearing is open, just the certification letter is sufficient for us to reach that conclusion? That's sort of a determinative, in other words?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you invoked it, you know, that motion specifically references the notice that you've received.
Okay. Yeah, then I don't have a problem.
I don't feel necessarily that we need to go forward with this any further, to be honest with you. I think we should invoke the safe harbors. I really do.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so, we have, at least I have it, a motion, and could I have a motion to invoke and declare the denial of Darwin Commons 40B application is consistent with local needs as defined in 760 CMR 56.03 1B and 56.034 due to receipt of a certification of approval dated September 10th, 2021, issued by the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development, certifying the town of Walpole's compliance with its housing production plan, approved for a 2-year period running from April 27th, 2021 to April 26th, 2023. Town council, is that
So moved.
a good motion? Okay. Okay. Motion has been moved by Jane.
Second?
Okay.
Yeah, can you just say that the member, identify up front the members that are voting eligible on this application?
Okay. So voting tonight on the safe harbor will be the 5 regular members.
Okay.
And those, I'm sorry, actually, it'll be,
Dave's not
Dave's not here, so Mark will vote on this.
And are you designating Mark to sit on this application through?
No, so only for tonight on voting on the safe harbor issue. That's the only thing that we have, that's what we're voting on right now.
Yeah, I tend to like to identify your board that's gonna be on an application throughout. So if you're anticipating that full member would waive in later on the continued public hearing date, otherwise just have this member as the 5th voting member on this application and go from there. And include him on this vote, and then he would ultimately vote on the application.
Well, the problem with that is, as we know, a 40B application can be a very lengthy process, and identifying the members up front means that we're locked into those members, so that if a member is out, then,
More than once. I mean, I've
Well,
cautioned my boards that way before, is that you wanna make sure, you know, you can miss one, but
But
you can't.
the whole idea of having
I guess what I'm saying
alternates-
to you is I recommend against sort of puzzling together the board. You wanna be clear from the outset, this is the 5-member board that's gonna be voting on this. If
Okay.
it ends up, you end up with a smaller board because somebody misses more than one, then so be it, you end up with a 4-member board. But I don't recommend, you know, piecing it together depending on whatever quorum is there, you know, even on a lengthy process.
okay, okay.
So,
We, very good. So, Mark, are you comfortable being on the? Okay. Okay,
You want to identify it?
so
Everybody?
yep,
Who's
the,
voting?
let me, I also should just introduce all the board members tonight. We have Associate Member Judy Conroy, Associate Member Tim Hegler, Board Member Drew Delaney, Board Member Mary Jane Coffey, Bob Fitzgerald is the secretary for the clerk for the board, and Mark Major is an associate member that will be sitting on this per recommendation from town council, and I'm John Lee, chairman of the board. Okay, so we have a motion before us. It's been made by Jane, seconded by Bob. Any further discussion on this? And the voting members of this will be Drew Delaney, Jane Coffey, Bob, Mark Major, and I, and me. Okay. So, it's been made, seconded. Any further discussion? Everybody understand what they're doing? Okay. Okay, and this is to vote to invoke and declare safe harbor period. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So carried. Okay. So also, per town council's guidance, the next thing we should do is move further that the board provide written notice of the board's declaration to the applicant with a copy of the Department of Housing and Community Development notice under 760 CMR 56.038. And the public hearing is to be continued until a time and place certain. And I think what we should do at this point is go 60 days out, so 2 months, and that still keeps us within the compliance with the 40B, which the whole process has to be completed within 180 days. So we're fine on that. Does anybody, Patrick, have you looked to see what the exact date would put us to? Just over 60 days, or just over 60 days?
December 15th.
So that would be Wednesday, December 15th. So Wednesday, December 15th at 7 PM here at Town Hall in the main meeting room. Could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved by Jane,
Second?
second by Bob. Any further discussion? Town council, we good on this?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of continuing this until December 15th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So carried. Okay, so we continue out until December 15th.
Yeah, and pursuant to your vote, Patrick will send out that written notice to the applicant at DHCD.
Okay, very good. Okay. Anybody have anything else on this? Okay, we've continued this hearing until December 15th. I see there's a lot of people here, so thank you for coming out tonight, and that's where we're at. Okay. Okay. Next thing we have is some minutes and reorganization of the board.
Are you confused? You're making
So next thing we had was the minutes from September 15th, and I did have a chance to review those, and they look good. Did anybody else have any questions or comments on those minutes? No?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, could I have a motion to accept the minutes of September 15th?
So moved.
Moved by Jane.
I was not present, so.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Second.
Second by Drew. All those in favor of approving the minutes of September 15th, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want them. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Next, let's talk about board reorganization. And the board gets reorganized from time to time as far as chairperson and where we stand. Actually, let me just, are you going to talk with him outside?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
won't be anything of significance.
Okay. Thank you, George.
Thanks,
Good
John.
seeing
Nice
you.
to meet you.
You the same here.
I've seen you on TV
Oh,
many nights.
I've seen on TV.
Okay. So, one of the questions is, we need to reorganize from time to time, and I've been chair for a while, and it's been a interesting period of time with COVID and 40Bs and appeals and this and that. Does anybody have a nomination for a slate, or does anybody want different positions on the board?
No, I would like to nominate you again for chair. I think you've done a fantastic job through some very difficult projects and maintaining order and, being responsive to public input. So
I would
I
second
think you've
that
done a
wholeheartedly.
fantastic job, and I endorse you as continuing as chair.
And that would be second for me.
And I can't third, but I
Yes, you
completely
can.
agree with that.
Right.
So,
And I was hoping Dave would be here tonight, but
Well, I don't think we can wait any longer.
no. So the other thing, Bob, you've been clerk, and would you stay on as clerk, or would you want to be vice chair at some point?
I'm happy to fulfill either role. As clerk, I've just been, reviewing and decisions before they go out, and so I could continue to do that in either capacity. So I'd be happy to be vice chair if that's the will of the board.
Okay.
I was thinking of nominating Matt and Drew as vice chair, because Bob has done such a fabulous job watching to keep us in the legal boundaries we need to be. I wonder if you would,
Sure.
if that would be okay with you, Bob,
Absolutely. Happy to defer to Drew on
and how about you?
So one of the things, it's very, Bob does an amazing job.
Yes, he does.
As far as the final person
Fabulous.
to make sure that the decision is rock solid before it gets,
right.
before it gets signed and gone out.
Fabulous.
So I think that's,
Yeah.
if you would continue doing that, and Drew, I also think this gives you an opportunity to step into the role as vice chair, if that's something you'd be willing to do.
Absolutely. I
There you go.
appreciate the opportunity,
There
but
you go.
thank you very much.
You got it, pal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Anybody else?
No, we're good.
Okay. So, okay.
So now we have a slate.
We have a slate, and the slate is, and the five members that would vote on this will be Judy, Drew, Jane, Bob, and me. And the slate would be John as chair, Drew as vice chair, Bob as clerk.
My chair next time.
Could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
That's where you come in. Okay, yep,
Second,
okay.
since I'm voting.
And second with Judy? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay,
There we go.
so we'll change the letterhead around a little bit, but congratulations, Drew, and thank you, Bob, to continue as the clerk. It's so important.
John,
Yeah,
so continuing to read us on.
yeah. So,
We got a good team here.
Thanks to our new members too for signing on. It's great to have more
Sure.
insights into everything that we're reviewing, and it's really helpful. So I'm
Oh,
glad
Bob,
to
you've
see
done a
more people.
fantastic job. I mean, I feel like we have our own private attorney here, so.
Well, we do.
Just exactly. And
Do not represent the board.
those, but those would be very hard shoes to fill among us, let's put it that way.
Okay,
So-
and we miss Suzanne very much, that's
Oh,
for sure.
you better believe it.
Suzanne had great knowledge about zoning in the
Oh,
town of
you're not
Walpole,
kidding.
so. But happy to have three new members, we've reorganized, so we're good for a while. And next time we meet, next meeting we have coming up is November 3rd, and that is a regular meeting with some 48 cases. Patrick?
So I put those as tentative. Right now, I've had a few people reach out to me. I'm going to walk them through the process, but I have no active applications at the
Okay.
moment.
Okay.
So
So if we don't have active applications, that's fine. No in-laws are coming in or anything like that?
I actually spoke to 3 people, so I mean, there's some stuff in the works probably for later in November, but at the moment, in terms of just notifying, we got nothing.
Okay.
At the moment.
I'd like to raise a question. Patrick, what's happening with the secretary's position here? I tell you, I'm finding it,
I think maybe we can,
yeah.
you can discuss that with Patrick after the meeting?
No, I just wanted to say that I'm wondering when this, what is happening with this? Is
position.
John going to be involved in the interviewing process? I mean, I was on this board years ago, and there was this, and the chairman was always involved in picking a candidate, and I was just wondering what's happening here. We haven't heard anything, and it seems
So we were looking
somewhat
into-
ludicrous to have the director of the economic development having to fill in here. It just seems
Yeah.
like it doesn't fit.
Well, we took a look at the position and tried to think about growth in the future, and expanding the role beyond the board secretary. There was a plan reviewer slash permit coordinator position that was on the books, a position that had been created in the past, and looking to try to revise that position to fill in the role as both a board secretary and someone that could fill in and assist on more comprehensive planning work, to treat it more as more of a full-time position than a part-time position. So right now, that's the position that's being advertised. That would be able to be the liaison as the board secretary would.
I'm just wondering where the change came, because in the letterhead on the agendas, it would say Amy Messinger, secretary to ZBA, and then one night, it suddenly became administrative assistant, the economic development, and I just want to know how that happened. I think the charter states as a secretary. I mean, I could be totally in the dark here, but it seems to me that somewhere along the line, this shift came.
Amy's letterhead was changed to admin?
Yes, it was. It was,
I don't know, was that?
no, it's before you came. It was before
Yeah.
there was even a position of economic development.
Okay.
And
Ashley was
yeah,
in that position.
but before that even happened,
Before Ashley.
before Ashley even came,
Oh, I don't,
before the gentleman before her, the ZBA, and I think by the charter, has a secretary. And when the economic development person came aboard, somehow or other, one day we looked at it, and here was the zoning secretary,
yeah.
now administrative assistant to the economic development. I'm just wondering how that happened and who was involved in making that decision. And I'm curious what the long-term ramification. I'm almost feeling that we're going to be absorbed here, and not have our own identity. Let me put it that way. Before you came, before John even came, we had Matt Zucker here, and I think, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how did this happen?
Well, I can't speak to something that
Yeah.
happened years ago, but I do know that with Amy, as well as hopefully with this new person, trying to expand their role to take on additional tasks, and have the position be more than a full-time position. I mean, more than just a secretarial part-time position. I think that's kind of the agenda of, I know what Amy was doing with Ashley, and then what I tried to pick up with Amy, and then
Right.
hopefully with this next person. So they still report directly to the board. I mean, their board is who they are the main board secretary.
Well, that's what I'd like to have
Yeah.
reinforced.
Yeah.
I'd like to not have it just sort of absorbed into a bigger picture. I think we're going to lose our autonomy as a board here. And we as a board are supposed to be independent of other boards and look what's before us and work in collaboration with planning and conservation. But we have our own identity, and I feel like we're losing this now. And I'm glad to hear you say.
I don't think
But
that's-
I'm glad to hear you say that the responsibility of that position is to the chairman of the zoning board, and I don't feel that's happening.
yeah, I mean,
I mean, I don't mean to
Similar
put you
to-
on the spot.
Yeah, no,
I
I-
don't know how else to bring this
I think it's
to
just
people's
looking and
attention.
trying
There's
to
no other
expand the
way.
role to be able to take on additional tasks. I mean, if someone is actively searching for additional work or being able to learn and grow into the position, that's more than just the day-to-day regulatory tasks of kind of monitoring permits. There's more time to kind of investigate, do long-range planning, and do more kind of more comprehensive studies and research.
Right.
And so that's kind of what that person ideally could
Yeah.
be.
No, I don't have a problem with that, I really don't. My concern is that we're losing our autonomy, and I'm glad to hear you say it. I want to reinforce it, and I want to say it again, it is in the record here, that the secretary or whomever, and whatever they are absorbed or job share or whatever, that person does have is responsible
Yeah.
and report to, so to speak, the chairman.
Yeah, sure.
So, and you already told me today that you had an interview with somebody for the position.
Today, yeah, we've interviewed one person, well, two people technically, but the applications have been, we've put out there for a few weeks. We'll hopefully try to get a few more applicants. It's,
But why wasn't John involved in that process is what I'm asking. Because in my experience, I was on the board years ago, and then I had a hiatus of many years, and then, of course, I came out of retirement to save the world, you said, save my sanity, and I don't see that happening now. I really don't. I don't think, I can't speak for Matt, because I don't know, but it's my impression that he somehow had some involvement. But to say, on the one hand, that that person is responsible to the chairman, and you're saying 3 people or more have been interviewed with absolutely no input from the chairman, or even invitation to be involved in the process, is worrisome to me.
okay. Well, I mean, the responsibility is to the zoning board as well as the department, so.
But why is the zoning chairman not involved in that process? I think that's something I'd like to,
So let's,
So,
we
alright.
we can
Okay,
work on that.
that's it.
So why don't we, you and I can talk about what it's gonna take to get zoning board representation at the table when we're looking at applicants.
And I would like to feel that however this is resolved, that when the person is hired, that John would have at least had some input, as opposed to, here's your new person. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
You know, does that make sense,
Yep,
Judy?
that makes sense to me, Jane. I just had one question. When you use the term job responsibility as plan checker,
Yeah.
that confuses me because we have a building inspector who checks plans, an assistant deputy building inspector who checks plans, and they go to them first. And then you check plans, Patrick, I believe.
It's in the it's just in the title, so it's a plan review and a permitting coordinator. So they
But
would review.
that, to me, that's like what
Yeah.
educational, technical education, what experience, and when I'm a resident, and I'm speaking as a resident, not, and a board member, but when I hear that word plan checker, I think, okay, that person's gotta have some high skills, so we're at a high salary. Now, even right now, we don't have anything before us for the next meeting. So, an administrative assistant that serves the chairman of the zoning board of appeals solely to do work for the zoning board of appeals, maybe it doesn't need to be 40 hours a week at $40,000 plus benefits for life.
Well, they wouldn't just
I don't
solely
understand
be working
either.
on zoning board related issues. They'd also be working on long range planning studies and working with me on projects.
But they were also working, since I came on board after the hiatus here, that secretary, it was part-time zoning and part-time conservation. And yet, well, Amy didn't want to do the conservation, and I think that's common knowledge, and that's okay, that was her preference. And somebody else filled in there, I'm assuming somebody else was hired. But I agree with Judy, it's, you can't get your hands around it. It feels like it's slipping somewhere. We're being absorbed in a bigger picture. And I'm still concerned that the chairman of the zoning board, whomever he or she would be, should be more involved. And this should not be done somewhere else and then presented, well, this is who you're going to have. Do you follow me?
Was that conducted with Amy as well? Was she-
I'm assuming it was. But if the person, no matter where the position is, if I'm hired by somebody and I'm responsible to Joe Schmo here, I'm assuming that Joe Schmo is going to be involved in my selection. I don't think I'm just going to speak to him and then suddenly I'm here. It just doesn't seem right, and it isn't right. That person could come up, let's assume you hired somebody, and that person will be introduced to us. So here is your new secretary here. And by the way, her title is XYZ. I don't even care about the title. I care about losing the position. And I'm looking at it straightforward, and that's what I see happening. And there's no, and I hate to bring it up here because it isn't personal, believe me, it isn't. I'm looking at the bigger picture, and there really is no forum within the town for the citizens to know who is going where and responsible to whom. We had a newspaper, and that was wonderful. It was way before your time. But and we had somebody at every board meeting, no matter what, janitor's meeting, whatever, and it was published in the paper, and people read it. And now, yes, we have the government channel, and we have Zoom, but I dare say that the majority of the people do not necessarily look at that. And certainly a lot of seniors don't look at it. They look at the senior center, but they're not looking to see what's happening on the planning board and what's happening, because they don't even know what those boards do for the most part. Only those of us who have been involved and are aware and try and keep on top of things would know about that. And so what I see happening here is that this is all happening, and I think part of it is, of course, the pandemic and Zoom. I personally don't think anything is 100% transparent in the Zoom in a pandemic, and I think that's nobody's fault. That's just the reality of the situation. But there is no way for John Q. citizens to know what's happening here. The zoning board has a secretary by the charter. And however that happens, I don't see it happening here. I hear you say it, I'm glad to hear you say that that person has a responsibility to answer to the chairman, whomever he or she is. That's one thing, but it's not happening over here. Here's the words, and there's no follow-through. So I don't know to who to address this.
Well, I think we're
Okay.
addressing it. No,
Yeah.
no, that's
Addressing
good.
it
We're
to me.
addressing it to
Yeah.
Patrick.
Okay.
And Patrick, I will be available, and if it's not me, it can be another zoning board member
All right.
in the interview process, because I agree with Jane. This board should be part of that, and we should be part of it and need to be part of it.
Okay.
Okay. So, thank you, Jane. Awesome. Okay. Anything else? Anything else, board members? Good. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jane, second by Judy. Any further discussion on adjourning? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Good night, everybody.
Good night.